Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you today. Thank you for joining our event. And it's important conversation on women's health in the workplace that we're having today. I'm Melina, the Global Program Director at Women in Tech and founder of Essence. Essence help company to close DEI goals and help, most importantly, women to thrive in life and at workplace. And it's important to highlight at the beginning that during this conversation, when we're talking about women, we embrace menstruating people, gender non-conforming, and LGBTQ identified. So everybody is welcomed, and we just wanted to highlight it. So why we're bringing this topic today, and why we think it's important to raise awareness about women's menstrual health and well-being. So there are several reasons and some disturbing stats, and one of them is that well-being gender gap has increased due to COVID. You maybe experience it by your personal experience or know your friends or colleagues who have some problems which started and being increased after the pandemic. And also the burnout gender gap between men and women almost doubled since 2020, and McKinsey reports show that it proves that it's company's business as well, because it also reflects on how women feel at workplace and how they can be empowered there. So, today we'll talk about mental health overall and also about the missing puzzle of menstrual health in women's well being and DS strategies at the workplace. And I welcome the audience to actively participate and ask us questions, share your experience, because it's important for us to know if we're on the same page, if we're not alone in this journey. And let us know in the comments if you have experienced work-related burnout and how you manage that. And while we're starting talking with you in the comment section, I would like to introduce you to our amazing speakers who are joining the event today. And first is Daniel Kaiser. Daniel is a co-founder and executive director of Menstrual Health Hub and managing partner at Madami. Daniel is the leading authority on menstrual health worldwide. And Rashmi Sharma. Rashmi is a global leadership and learning director at Coca-Cola. And Rashmi has over 16 years of experience in driving action for some of the best names in global people practices like Coca-Cola, Unilever, IBM, and more. Vanessa Licorbs, Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the Zuckerman Mind Brain Behavior Institute at Columbia University. And Daniel Poza. Daniel is a workplace well-being advisor and also vice chair of the Global Wellness Institute's Workplace Well-being Initiative. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining this event and for raising awareness around these important topics. And we already have audience from all over the world, from Poland, California, Nigeria. So welcome, everyone. Let's, without further ado, jump into questions to our speakers. And while we are doing that, please feel free to ask what's on your mind and what information you want to maybe learn, some best practices from our speakers. So my first question is going to be to Daniel Pozar. Daniel, you work with organizations to help them develop and build well-being strategies. And can you tell us more about what does the well-being and burnout gender gap mean for companies? And how do well-being programs impact their business goals?
Sure. That's a big question. So I guess starting more high level, just about the importance of well-being in general. I think for the most part, we're seeing that caring about well-being or just people's lives. I always like to make sure we're on the same page about the fact that we're really talking about people's entire lives, not just wellness or a particular piece of the wellness puzzle. So really understanding and taking an interest in the overall livelihood of employees and understanding, who they are, I always say past, present, and future in terms of what they're looking to accomplish in the future is just so important now. It's definitely not a trend. It's here to stay for good. And organizations are, I think, starting to recognize that just programs aren't enough, that well-being really needs to be part of the entire culture of the organization. um, and the rise in burnout just across the board has been evidence of, how it's more important than ever to focus on well-being. But yeah, you mentioned the burnout gap between men and women. I mean, it's the thing about burnout is that it's not just physical exhaustion or just working too many hours. Burnout is a function of emotional exhaustion, of having so many things on your mind. And as a mom of two little kids, I can tell you that often there is that there's so many other things going on. I believe in the minds of a woman, and thinking about your family and particular aspects of your own health that are different than maybe what's on the minds of men, and that's part of that emotional burnout that contributes to the gap. I think so. So, so yeah, I just think this is such an important conversation, and we really need to highlight specifically the needs of women. And as we've seen, like so many women have left the workforce during the pandemic because of those needs, because they need to meet the needs of their families. They have to wear all of these hats, and so to get them back into the workforce and to feel like included and empowered, we have to understand like kind of that journey that they've been through. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also, what I wanted to mention that I'm checking the comment section. It's amazing to see how many women from so many different places. It's Vietnam, Philadelphia, Bay
yeah,
Area, Toronto, Nigeria, Peru. So it's a very international topic. It's what we have cross-cultural and important issue. So I'm really great to see that we're all in this together, and it means that we have
yeah.
more power and opportunity to change this. And Daniel Kaiser. So let's just jump into menstrual health and talk more about this sensitive topic, which is still sensitive for many people and especially companies. And do you want to share more about how menstrual health impact women's well-being, mental health, and productivity and work?
Sure. Well, I think it's important for us to start with the actual definition of menstrual health. So in 2021, just so you know, that's when the official definition of menstrual health was published in the world. So it just shows you how far behind we might be in this
That's
world.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But together with the WHO and a high level team of experts, we define menstrual health as a complete state of physical, mental, and social well being in relation to the menstrual cycle. So this implies that all people with periods, women included, are able to have 5 specific conditions met. And the most important for the purposes of this chat today are to experience a positive and respectful environment in relation to the menstrual cycle, free from stigma and psychological distress, including the resources and support they need to confidently care for their bodies and make informed decisions about self-care throughout their menstrual cycle. Also, people who menstruate should be able to decide for themselves whether and how to participate in all spheres of life, including civil, cultural, economic, social, and political, during all phases of the menstrual cycle, free from menstrual-related exclusion, restriction, discrimination, coercion, and/or violence. So this is supposed to cover like all experiences everywhere. So of course we can find ourselves positioned within the middle somewhere, but right there in the definition of menstrual health, which is a globally recognized framework, we see that menstrual health is intrinsically connected to well-being, mental health, and productivity, not just physically. So if we move to like the individual or physiological level, the monthly biological rhythm that manages the reproductive function of the female experience is ruled by the rise and fall of specific sex hormones, namely estrogen and progesterone, among a few others. But these two primary ones really dictate so many of the bodily functions that we do every single day, including sleep, stress, appetite, and libido, just to name a few. So why wouldn't they also affect mental health when we bring our full selves to work? The important thing to take away is that the right balance must be maintained between these two, estrogen and progesterone, for optimal well-being and mental health. However, when progesterone levels are too low, estrogen dominates, which leads to a myriad of problems. Estrogen dominance is caused by a host of factors, but the leading cause is stress. And a really important study in 2012 revealed that increased levels of progesterone in the luteal phase of your cycle is usually accompanied by lower levels of aggression, irritability, and fatigue. So essentially, we live in this fast-paced capitalist world where we're constantly chasing the clock and living like we need to be the same amount of productive every single day, when in reality, this is absolutely impossible to achieve if we look at physiologically what drives us, which is our hormones. So in able to do our highest quality of work, we really need to be paying attention and living in the world that is for us, not a world that is maybe based on a more circadian rhythm, which is what men experience in their energy levels, whereas women experience an infradian rhythm, which is across a monthly cycle. So I just gave a little bit of like nerdy scientific background, but it's all to kind of place a foundation for understanding that there's so many ways in which menstrual health comes into core in contact with our well-being, whether it's at work, at home, where we work, live, and play. It affects everything.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's a very big topic. That's why, like, you've been researching it for more than 10 years, and it's becoming even more and more interesting and complex. And we still have a lot of new research coming. So it's very inspiring to see that it's becoming a bigger movement. And we have a big audience too, because people from Uganda, Norway also starting watching us. Hello, everyone. And please ask your questions in the comments. We already have a few, and we will be starting getting back to them very soon. So Vanessa, next question is to you. You have an outstanding experience in diversity, equity, inclusion. And is well-being a part of organization's DEI strategy? How does it correlate?
It does, absolutely. I mean, just listening to what Daniel just shared with us and everything that makes up well-being, the good news is that organizations are paying attention, and well-being and mental wealth health are now part of strategies. And there was a report that came out recently from the Mindshare partners that showed that 54% of employees actually associate wellness with diversity. Actually, they associate it with diversity issues. And 50% of employees have left their jobs because of mental health or wellness issues. So very, very closely tied. And when we think about belonging at work, the feeling that you're part of something bigger and you have purpose, there is definitely a tie to well-being. When you're not feeling included, you cannot be productive. You're not giving your best. And we know now that companies, employers have to be compassionate, show empathy, lead inclusively, and take perspectives into consideration. Otherwise, the workforce is not going to feel like they belong, and that has a direct impact on feelings of well-being. So, in short, absolutely. And the good news is, it's happening. We're seeing that well-being and diversity and inclusion are now part of the employee value proposition. And we can absolutely, and we should continue to make them integrated as part of the strategy.
Thank you for that. I think it's also important to talk about that and to start talking about that and promote speak up culture in companies because it's still there is a very broad opinion that it's just personal women's business that's needed to be like some kind of managed by them privately in their bathrooms and not sharing this experience and not trying to raise awareness about that. Rashmi is talking about big corporations and organizations. Next question is to you. Menstrual health is a sensitive topic. And just like mental health was 5 years ago when nobody was talking about it openly, you couldn't imagine coming to your manager and say that you have burnout or some depression. Now, mental health is an integral part of corporate well-being strategies and benefits in most companies. And why should companies start paying attention to menstrual health as well and invest in female employees' well-being?
So, Elena, I would say three things. And first of all, thank you so much for getting us together. I think, just from the comments, we can see that there's a lot of people are resonating with this. And I think one of the participants says, regardless of where we are, we have the same problems, right? And yet, this is the first time I'm talking about menstrual health to not just at a public forum, but just to any other woman, so it's very telling, how much there is a need to have this conversation. So thank you so much for bringing us together. And from a corporation perspective, I would say three things actually, why we should invest in this. As Daniel Kaiser very, beautifully talked about, that it matters. It matters. It affects your mental health. Hence, it affects your overall health. Hence, it affects your engagement. All of those things. So I think that's the biggest reason. When companies spend so much on employee engagement without taking into account something so fundamental which affects employee engagement and well-being, those strategies are not going to work if we don't include this. The second thing I would say is that there's been a lot of research on what we call presenteeism and absenteeism. And these are well-being terms when we do research about how much money we spend on well-being versus how much the business kind of gets the ROI, or so to say. And there's been enough research which talks about that every dollar you spend on well-being and, to help employees, the business makes back like $3 or $4, depending on which research you quote. So there is hard business value to taking care of employees' well-being. And a third reason I would say is that women typically make, around 50% of the workforce. So imagine not having 50% of your workforce show up in their most powerful, most innovative, most purposeful avatar every day to work. They're physically there, but they're mentally not giving you their best. And why would any business owner, forget large corporation, any business owner, why would they know this and not do anything about it? So I would say there's a real hard case and a business ROI on taking care of employees' well-being, especially women's well-being.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. It's very true. We have one round of questions, and I want to jump into one of the audience question from Jasmine. And Jasmine is writing to us that she's a single mom and definitely feel disparity and lack of understanding in the workplace. Constantly trying to keep the same pace as my boys, when she is the only one at her company with a single parent role. And emotional burnout is real. Who would like to reflect on that?
I'd be happy to, but I want to jump back in again and in case Vanessa wanted to share. But So first of all, I mean, just thank you for saying that. I have often thought about single moms in my journey, because I have a very supportive husband who's very active, with our kids, and have felt, shocked by how hard it is, or how hard it was, especially with my kids when they were younger, even with somebody who is so hands-on and who has flexibility in his job. And in those moments, I have thought about you, Jasmine, and single mom. And I'm like, just how hard that must be, and how I've often said to myself, like, I don't know how I would do it if it was just me. So first of all, just um I definitely applaud you. Um and this is just such a real thing that just needs to it I think just the big thing, for workplaces is just being able to share that information, and actually have it be listened to and understood. And I think it's like the issue, within organizations, is that there's that disconnect between, you might even be in an organization that at the senior level and the company level is well intended and is working on the D&I strategies, and a workplace well-being strategy, or trying to come up with solutions. And the challenge then, but then doesn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily translate down to your manager. And maybe you're not able to, maybe you don't have the relationship with your manager where you're able to share your struggles as a single mom, right? I don't know what your specific situation is, Jasmine, but I think that's where the more work has to be done, where managers are taking the time to truly get to know you and your situation and the challenges that you are dealing with specifically as a woman, and caring about that, and know what your life looks like out of work, and know why you might leave the office before all of the men do, right? So you can maybe get back to your kids. And so there just needs to be more empowerment, I think, to managers to just be genuinely interested in your life and what it is that you're dealing with. And I think that's one of, and would love to hear, because I know the other panelists here are inside big organizations witnessing that. So maybe we can talk about that connection between kind of just the managers being able to have those kinds of conversations, and that disconnect between the manager and kind of the intentions of leaders.
That's right.
I'd love to add something here just around, when we talk about DEI, I think equity is really where much more needs to be unpacked. We've been on this like crusade for gender equality, but we can't possibly get to equality. We're not the same. Our bodies are different, like our minds work differently. You just explained a lot about hormones. We're not equal. Our opportunities should be equal. And what we need to do to be able to get to be equal is understand all the things that make us different. So the fact that you are a single mom, the fact that you have so many more responsibilities is an equity issue. And those are things that it is, the responsibility of a manager or an HR firm to really make sure that they understand the equity index of their employees. What are the different pressures that are coming on them that are completely out of their control? And so I always urge people, to kind of switch the frame when we're talking about equality, to really talk about equity first, because we can't possibly get to that even playing field unless we've addressed these years and centuries of discrepancies merely because of our gender. And then you add on other factors like race and class, sexual orientation, etc. And those equity gaps get wider and wider and wider and wider. And so, I really love that this term DEI has come into the purview, but I feel like we really need to focus on the equity piece much more.
That's right. And also to build on both comments, is really to advocate, right? Find the resources as well as the questions, and create the path for yourself and for others, because not everybody might feel comfortable speaking up or looking or leveraging your employee assisted program, for example, and making sure the resources are being leveraged. And if they're not available, to really take the time to look for them, because I hear you, the emotional burnout is real and it has a cost. So
That's lovely. It's great thought starters, right? In terms of, I think, just what Daniel said about educating your manager, having a conversation, and like you said, Vanessa, and just in terms of leveraging all the resources you have. Sometimes we as women, we tend to think we are alone, and this is I was just listening to a courageous conversations about women, the kind of conversations women are less likely to have, and one of those was, um, depending, I'm trying to get the right remember the right thing, but it said, depending only on work and not your relationships to support yourself. Build, only use that, but not the people around you. So those are some really good thoughts, Jasmine, for you to kind of think about. Maybe I'll just add another angle to it. Because I feel like when you say that question, when you say constantly trying to keep the same pace as the boys, I feel like that, uh, when does burnout happen? Burnout happens when you're doing something either physically and mentally, uh, which is going against what you want to do or what you can do. And I feel a lot of times it's happened to me, and we've all been there, right? Because you've only seen boys doing XYZ and succeeding, and then you're doing XYZ, and then you're trying to keep pace with the boys, but they are not the same, they're not same biologically, they are definitely not in the same situation as you might be, and so on and so forth. So I would say, maybe take a step back and think a bit creatively. Don't think that you are alone, and don't think you have to keep the same pace as the boys. How can you find creatively ways to still deliver, or still find different resources, to be able to do it? And I know it's not a simple answer, but maybe that's the direction you'll find worth kind of just going, thinking about.
Thank you all for your contribution to answering this question. It's very important, and you brought so many other important topics, and one of them is speaking up culture and open communication in the company, and that I would like to address to Daniel Posner, because you communicate with companies a lot and with leaders and managers. What do you think, how we can reduce stigma across women's entire journey, and what is the role for open communication in the company? What is the role of manager, organization leader?
Yeah, so first of all, I couldn't help but notice that I was trying to scroll through the comments to find some male names, but it's taking a while. So it's interesting because part of this is just that this conversation needs to not just occur, with us, right? So, it's just interesting that's telling, right? We need men to be chiming into this. Um, so yeah, just the communication, I guess, goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I try with my clients to give them very specific questionnaires for their managers, and for different types of meetings, whether that's it is a best practice that a manager, and if you're an employee, you should try to make sure of this, that you're checking in with your manager once a week and getting meaningful feedback, from your manager. So there's different types of meetings that managers are having, whether that's that weekly check-in, or maybe having some time to actually go to lunch to really get to know somebody. But each those different interactions are opportunities to truly get to know somebody. And I try to make it a point to empower my clients with like actual questions that employees can be asking that managers can be asking their employees, that go beyond, just kind of what's on their plate and what their priorities are, but asking about their lives, whether or not they're able to stay on top of their workload and feel, or if they're feeling stressed, whether that's in work or outside of work. But because I think that's where a lot of where the rubber meets the road of, like, the manager sometimes just doesn't know how to ask, and especially when it's maybe male manager, who's employed and a woman employee. Maybe as a woman, you don't feel comfortable sharing that, hey, I'm at that time of the month, right? Or that I have my kid is sick at home, and or maybe that I'm in my early stages of pregnancy. These are all those things that are going on with women that then are really hard to maybe say, especially to your male manager. And so if that manager is not asking questions that open up the dialogue, questions that are something like, well, how are things at home? How is your health? Do you feel good? Is there anything stressing you out? But things that just open up the dialogue more. Sometimes that does have to be almost prescribed to managers because they're just not equipped, or they feel uncomfortable having those conversations. So I think being just explicitly clear about what that communication looks and sounds like is a place to start for organizations. Let me know if I talk too much. Sometimes I feel like I get on my soapbox with these things. So you can cut me off, Alina, if you need to.
No, everything is perfect. Yeah, we can just take your answer and use as a guideline for companies, and like first practical steps. What can they do in order to promote and start talking about this? And I see in the comments a lot of reflection on different experience that women of color have, and that's why I would want to bring Vanessa on stage and ask why doesn't one size fit all, and is it important to develop different tools, different programs for different genders and ethnicities?
Yes, absolutely. So important, especially to build on the equity. We all have different needs, and companies need to know that and really take the time to ask the questions and understand what the needs are for the different groups, and then design to meet the needs. And it's so important to do that. Um, we've learned, for example, by doing going through this process, especially for the past 2 years, how important it was to create safe spaces for folks to have conversations authentically without being afraid of being judged or having one's experiences diminished or dismissed. So it's very important to understand that different groups need different initiatives, and really build and stay nimble and stay flexible in this agile world. And the key is to stay fluid in order to meet the needs. Definitely one size fits all, that doesn't work for development.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also what we see that some companies or some programs, they try to reach the whole population, the whole workforce, but it doesn't actually reflect the needs of all people because we are different. Women are different. Women of color, their ethnicities are different, so it's need to be personalized and humanized as well.
That's right. Learning is definitely contextual, especially these days. Needs to be.
Exactly. Um, Daniel, let's talk more about period. I know you can talk about it a lot, and let's reflect on how it was 10 years ago. What do you see? What changes has this field been through these years, and why is it still stigmatized?
So a lot has changed in the last 5 years, even around menstruation, periods, the whole conversation about menstrual cycles. I mean, people are literally waking up and kind of realizing, oh, I've had this menstrual cycle my whole life and I haven't really paid attention to it. Or I think this all hasn't happened in a vacuum. It's been alongside and thanks to movements, the larger movements around feminism, whether that's Me Too or calling attention to the gender pay gap or the gender health gap. But we're all kind of marching together in unison, shouting about our own particular issues and areas. And I think what's been really great about the menstrual movement is that it's come alive and to force because of activists and advocates really standing on their soapbox and really calling out blatant inequality, basically just because of the fact that we are able to reproduce. It's really wild when you think about it, that the one thing that enables us to create life in this world is the thing that holds us back in so many ways. And I think a lot of people kind of realize that and are digesting information that was misinformation. So if you grew up in the US, for example, you saw advertisements on TV that never said the word period or blood, used blue liquid on these pads, and just created an entirely different reality from what people were experiencing. And I think as popular culture, thanks to Instagram and social media, has pulled that apart, called out those lies and misinformation, we've been able to be more authentically ourselves and share that this does, we do have bad days some days, but also there's some really beautiful and amazing things about the menstrual cycle when we can optimize it and understand it and use it for our own power that push us to new levels of development. So I'd say it's been a lot of thanks to actually advocates in the global south, particularly in India and East Africa, that have really pushed the conversation around menstrual hygiene. And this is actually where the menstrual movement was started, was from places like this that really, started with the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector that was going in and building toilets for schools, and still realizing that girls weren't going to school. Why aren't girls going to school? We have these toilets. And then, upon further investigation, realizing, oh, it's because they're menstruating and they're experiencing pain, or they don't have anything to change their menstrual materials with, and they're using, cut up pieces of blanket or cloth or old socks stuck with dirt or with leaves or whatever they can find. I mean, we ladies are pretty resourceful, and I think that we have a lot of thanks to give to those initial advocates, and then it's really bled into the mainstream because of activists who ran marathons free bleeding, or were audacious enough to post a picture of themselves bleeding on Instagram. Instagram knocked it down. They put it back up. Instagram knocked it down. And what's so wrong with this? If we can have so many pictures of bodies and chests and sexualized images of women, why can't we have an image of a stain on our sweatpants? And so I think a lot of the conversations have changed because of social media, and we're also seeing this explosion on the marketplace as well. So before, we've had in Western high income countries, 2 options for managing our menstruation, pads and tampons. And in the last 5 years, there's just been an explosion of different new products on the market. A lot of this has to do with activism around environmental sustainability, calling into question the safety of a lot of the contents of some of these products, bleaches, plastics, a lot of things that shouldn't necessarily be in the most sensitive parts of our body, especially without proper testing. I mean, there's not even an international standard for menstrual products yet. That's currently in process. And it's crazy, this would never happen on the other side of the gender spectrum, where the most sensitive parts of things going into our bodies are just not routinely tested and have standards around. It's crazy. But luckily, in the last 2 years, there's been, explosion of conversation, a lot of breaking of taboos. There's been, an increase of awareness around menstrual discomforts, conditions, and disorders. People are understanding more around premenstrual symptoms, what's causing them. There's been a lot more talk around endometriosis in places like Europe and fibroids in the US. And this is largely due to the women of color, mostly, who are experiencing them and having really loud activist organizations and voices. Shout out to the Fibroid Foundation and the White Dress Project, who have been doing incredible advocacy work in the US. And it's all kind of gathering a lot of information that we previously didn't have or were too ashamed to talk about before. So what I think is still like, there's still a lot of stigma, but a lot is changing, and it pretty much comes from a place of lack of information and fear of what they think is the worst. But I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with men around periods, and when you come from a really confident educational perspective, that the human body is so cool, and that every single month we're able to like flush out what we don't need so we can start a new cycle. I find that some of them even get envious that they don't have a restart button, because if we really plug into our menstrual cycles and understand how some hormones make us feel more alive and energetic, and other ones are really, encouraging us to take care of our health as if we're our baby, and we know then to put down the laptop and really have those 9 hours of sleep, I think they get a little envious, because we have this like compass that can teach us and tell us ways to optimize our own behavior, and help us navigate those complex decisions, whether it's in work, family, relationships, etc. And I think coming from that like biological perspective and optimization and biohacking, it does become a lot more fascinating. And those conversations are starting to happen. So it is still stigmatized, but I have to say that there's so many more conversations. I mean, I don't have to explain what a menstrual cup is, or when people say, oh, 10 years ago, I'd say, well, I work in menstrual health. They're like, oh, mental health. I'm like, no, menstrual health. Well, what's that? Like, well, what do you think it is? It's the health of your menstrual cycle. And oh, I've never heard of that before. And now when I say, oh, I work in menstrual health, oh, that's so cool. I have a friend who does product donation drives, or, oh, I heard about these menstrual cups. What do you think about them? So the conversations definitely have changed. And I think we have a lot to be proud of in terms of how fast this window has happened. It's really been accelerated in the last 10 years. Although there have been activists that have been working on this since the 70s. So, we have to really stand on the backs of all of the mostly women, but some men, and a lot of non-binary, gender diverse folks who have been, setting the stage and enabling these conversations to happen in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also have this kind of confused conversation. Even now, when I'm talking about working in femtech, sometimes male investors, they correct me and say something like, you mean fintech? And I'm saying, no, femtech, not fintech. So it's still a way to go. And I would like to reflect on one of the comment that we received. And I think Rashmi, as the director of leadership and learning, can maybe comment on this, because it's related to glass ceiling. And Alexander is saying that we're still at a stage where women have to constantly learn and do not reach for high positions until they reach a certain level. And men do not have such a problem, even though they are often less competent than us. It's also the reason why our well-being at work is much worse. What do you think about it?
Yeah, Alexandra, I'm glad you brought this up. This is very much the truth, and it's very well researched. So I think the first I heard about it was Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In, and this is all about, in a way, about leaning in, right? Women feel like they need to have more degrees, they need to have more experience, they need to have more connections, they need to have more mentors before they feel equipped and confident to ask for a raise, ask for a promotion, ask for a different role, and so on and so forth. And imposter syndrome hits everyone, but women a lot more. So thanks for calling that out. Um, my personal view on this is that we keep, like, people like us, we keep having expanding the conversation. It's not going to immediately change a person's reality. So what does that woman do today, to deal with this? And I feel that one of the things which has worked with me is personally realizing that. So when you know that, oh, women do that. So when I feel like an imposter, maybe it's not the truth. Maybe it's the version of the truth because I'm a woman and research says that yes, this happens to women. So maybe that's not really the truth, right? So giving yourself, discounting your own
Mm.
version of that, having a chat with someone who you respect, someone who understands this, and having that bounce off that thought so that that person can talk you out of those feelings. So that's one. The second thing which has worked for me is, just as somebody in the comments said, right, in order to become equal we need to understand our differences. So whether it's our biological difference, whether it's our mental makeup, if we understand that difference, we can do that self talk and self affirmation, saying that, I can reach for that higher position. I don't need to have one more degree and a one more year of experience. I can do that. um, and I don't know if that helps, but every all of us feel that, and every woman leader I've spoken to feels that.
That's right.
So yeah, so you're not alone, and we just keep working at it.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to have a community, right? To find your tribe, find your people, find because you're not alone. No, so you can share best practices, tips, tricks, because we've all been there.
I would recommend this book. It's called Thinking Big by Tara Mohr, Mohr. That really helped me convince convince and understand why I feel what I feel. So if anybody is interested, you might want to pick up that, and
Do you want to
I
repeat the
think, yeah,
title again for everybody?
it's called Playing Big by Tara, Tara More. I don't know if that's okay, but Mohr is the spelling of that. Playing Big. Find your voice, your mission, your message.
Mm.
Yes,
But
thank you.
keep working on it, girl. Keep working on it. You'll have to keep working on it for your whole life, maybe. But
Don't
but
play
we all do
small.
that.
Don't play small.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I agree, and also it's important to start with the first, like understanding, realizing, and admitting that even maybe your self doubts are not true, and your inner voices might
Yeah,
lie to you, and they are not like your best advisors, and your inner like critic is not your friend. And it was the TED talk, which really helped me to understand that when I self criticize myself a lot, I usually start to thinking whether or not I would say it to my friend. And the answer usually no. I would never say it to my friend, and I'm trying to treat myself as my friend, not
yeah.
my.
I love that. I love that. Alina,
It,
do we have time for like a quick? I just want to share like a quick thing uh, from this point, and of course from the overall menstrual health perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Go.
Um, so this is an example of how we kind of underestimate and second guess ourselves, and how understanding the differences can actually be our superpower. So in COVID, I started like half of the world, on my fitness. I was like, okay, I'm going to be regular now. There is absolutely no excuse, and all of that, and I've been like a gym rat for many years. I've tried many different form of exercise and all of this thing, but I've never been super regular, like not like clockwork every second day. So I said, okay, COVID, there is absolutely no excuse, and I'll do it. And I couldn't. For 1.5 years, I tried for 3 months, and then I'm like, off for a week or two. Then the guilt cycle that, oh, I was out, I did not exercise for 2 weeks, and then you get back again, and then again happens, and then again happens. And obviously, what I thought is that I am being lazy. I was like, Rashmi, you're being lazy, you're not disciplined enough. Everybody everywhere is kind of working out in COVID, getting ripped bodies, and they have no excuse, and they are so much more disciplined. And this cycle continued till like 2.5 years until very recently. And then I came across this Instagram content about menstrual health or hormonal cycles and how women feel across. And I'm like, hold on, and I've never had menstrual symptoms other, like a pain or things like that. Maybe just, many years back, but I've not had any cramps. So obviously I was thinking that, oh, I can do everything every day because I don't seem to like have any pain or cramps or anything like that. And then, of course, I dug deeper, deeper, deeper. And I was like, whoa, that's the reason my body just does not feel like going to the gym to do hard strength training. And all I want to do is like yin yoga, which is basically just relaxing. And I'm like, oh my God, that just made me feel so liberated,
Mm.
so kind to myself. And I was like, why hasn't nobody ever talked to me? I'm 40. Why am I just hearing about it after
Mm.
20 years of menstruating?
Mm.
Yeah, because
Imagine.
this is actually our hidden power, and it takes education to learn about our bodies and a lot of listening. And with every cycle, there's an opportunity to optimize for future ones. And just to go back to the point about the inner critic and
Yep.
when you're at your most when you have your most self-doubt, it's usually in your premenstrual phase, and it's literally an opportunity for recalibration and reflection. And
Mm.
I think we've all experienced this before, like, why am I feeling unusually depressed, or why am I feeling so like down on myself right now? It's literally purposeful. Like, it's a
Mm.
time for
Yes.
you to carve out to be by yourself and actually understand, okay, like it's taking stock, right? Like,
Yeah.
what went well, what didn't go well, where can I really try to, do better for the next time, or where am I particularly proud? And so I think we need to be really easy on ourselves, because this phase is our most authentic self. It's pulling back the skin of what's already there.
Wow.
It's not like we become someone else. It's just during those other phases, we do more people pleasing, and our hormones make us feel more giddy or more excited or more, sexually aroused. But at this point, this is who we are in our deepest shadow
Mhm.
self, and we need to face that and sit with it. And so one of the things I often tell people is, people say like, oh, I don't want to be around her during that time because she can be such a bitch. And I always think, well, how can you be a bitch if no one's around, right? Like, so this is actually a calling to
Yeah.
spend more time alone. And if you can, I know it's a privilege in this world if you have so many responsibilities and are a caregiver, but even just 10 minutes of that alone time during that premenstrual phase, you'll see is an investment in yourself. And I think we're constantly chasing the clock to do things, to be productive all the time. But sometimes the most productive thing we can do is to do nothing, especially during that time. And so I think, all those people that are watching, if there's one thing that you can take away from all of these wonderful messages we're saying is you need that time to be the better version of yourself. And that looks like doing nothing and just being, and not being so hard on yourself, and knowing this too shall pass, because you'll feel it again at the next luteal phase.
Yeah. And
But
actually,
before
it
that,
has,
you'll feel good too.
yeah. And actually, it has helped my exercise routine. Taking that break and not stressing about it, and telling my trainer that, listen, I'm not going to do every day like you do with other male clients or every
No.
other day. It depends on my hormones and mood. And doing better. I'm doing better than I was ever, just from a fitness scale perspective. Because once you understand
Well,
that
and
this
then
can be a superpower, then yeah.
yeah,
There's
well, and
some
I know
real
I know where.
Sorry, I was just going to say
Oh, go
there's some
ahead.
really great apps out there that help with your fitness and training that are aligning you to your menstrual cycle. One of them is called Wild AI. So like if that's your thing, and trying to figure out how to optimize fitness, there's so many resources and tools out there that are
Yeah.
created by women for women. Plus, sorry, Danielle, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I just feel like this is it's so interesting. I mean, because I'm learning in this conversation, to be honest, and it's it's just it's a complete contextual shift, right? Of
Absolutely.
the whole thing. I mean, because on one end of the spectrum, like the bare minimum that we need from this is just to destigmatize, like just to talk about the basics. But where the conversation went, I feel like, is actually just um is like really a profound shift to not just be able to talk to the basics, but to actually look at, the whole process of our cycles and really being a woman as a form of empowerment to make sense of what we're going through, to turn that, like you guys have just said, that self-doubt into actually like not just acceptance, but like starting with acceptance, like actually, oh, it's okay that I feel this way, that I feel a little bit more vulnerable at this time of the month. This is part of my process. It's important to feel this vulnerability so that I can actually do that reflection, and so that it reminds me to go inward and to spend that time. I mean, that's a whole different, that goes way beyond just being able to talk about it and destigmatize, and actually to truly respect the whole process, the whole world of being a woman, right? I mean, I feel like I feel better just
Yeah,
but it
it's
really
very
is, there's so much to
empowering. It's
learn. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, I need to know this stuff. So this is just so fascinating,
yeah,
and it's so needed to get out there more for us as individual, as women, but for the world to have a different kind of respect and appreciation for the the nature of being a woman, right? So
yeah,
Yeah. I,
absolutely. I
I,
was just
I
like, yep, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Danielle. Go.
No, I was gonna say just on that, like I started in this space really coming from a sanitation and hygiene international development lens, and I had no idea that in going deeper and learning about the menstrual cycle that it would actually be my greatest teacher. Like I have learned so much just from reading about physiology and what hormones actually are doing, and this is made me feel so much better because I could be like, okay, how am I feeling right now? I'm actually feeling really excited, and okay, I'm on
mm,
day 9. That's why I'm feeling so freaking good right now,
mm,
and then be like, okay, why am I feeling so crappy right now? Yes, day 24, heavy, deep luteal phase. Like my progesterone is setting in and telling me to chill. Okay, I'm not going to go out for drinks with my friends tonight because my jammies and my book sound like exactly what my body needs right now. And
mm.
that's really empowering because it comes from a place of being able to say yes and no, make decisions. Of course, you can't be perfect, and it's just supposed to be a helpful thing. But yeah, like as a guide and as a teacher, I continuously learn every month, and it makes me really excited about the next cycle, menopause, which maybe we can have another webinar about that another
That
time.
is that is so true. And to me,
Oh,
it's about unlearning what society and men
mm,
and other people have been telling us what works for us. And we, when we know our bodies and we can stay aligned and we can learn, then and increase our awareness, it helps regain our power and it helps us play big. So definitely great.
Yeah.
I To wrap up this amazing conversation, I wanted to share the handout that Danielle, Kaiser, and I were preparing for the audience for today's webinar. It's about our cycle. It's about what Rashmi started
oh, so
talking
cool.
about, like how you can optimize your nutrition, your exercise routine to different phases of menstrual cycle, how just learning about that empowers you and help you to unlock these strengths, and also help you to gain some empathy towards yourself and not to be so overwhelmed and self-criticized all the time. And it's also how it correlates with your work as well, because we are humans, we're women, we have different levels of hormones. They fluctuate throughout the month, not throughout the day. And it also has huge impact on how we feel, how we perform, and you can use this guideline. It's based. It's a very simple infographic which is based on scientific discoveries and research on women's hormones and how it correlates with our creativity, our reflection, mood, and so on and so forth. So please.
This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I love this visual. It's so great.
We spent a good amount of time yesterday together in person, like, ooh, what's, like we were just in a real crafty, creative mood. So we're happy to share.
Yes. And I also wanted to end this conversation with some tech and practical steps that the audience, AHRs, DRA, well-being departments can start building this kind of open speak-up culture at workplace and start destigmatize this topic. So you can print out the menstrual health pamphlet, the one that Daniel was talking about before, and place it in your corporate bathrooms. So to help your employees to start getting knowledge about that, because we saw that in the comment section today. And also we're all women in the panel today, we discovered that not too late, fortunately, but it would be nicer to have this knowledge when we started having this experience. Also, you can share information with your colleagues and friends. You can share this infographic if you like it. It will also help you to navigate throughout your cycle. This is a pamphlet, which is amazing handout for your corporate firms. And you can contact us on LinkedIn or their email or on the website, theessenceapp.com, to accelerate changes in your workplace and to start getting more information about that. And if you sign or if you leave your email on the website, we will send you all the key takeaways from today's conversation and all handouts materials. Thank you so much, Vanessa, Daniel, Rashmi, and Daniel, for this conversation. I believe it's not the last one. It's just the beginning. We will still be on a mission to raise awareness around women's menstrual health, well-being. And if we won't close this gender gap, nobody will do it for us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you all.
Everyone who joined from across the world.
Yeah,
I can see some
so
people
great.
from Vietnam, like midnight birds like me, I guess.
That's so nice. Bye, everybody.
Good
Thank
meeting
you.
everyone. Bye.
Have a good day. Thanks, Alina. Bye.